right, y'all. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining us back on the Geekly Goods Live channel. We have episode 2 of the Throwback Theater. Welcome back if you're joining us. Today, we're going to look back at a 1997 film directed by Jan de Bont called Twister, in honor of Twisters, which just debuted in the theaters, directed by Lee Isaac Chung, an action-adventure film, obviously about tornadoes. And the original film itself followed a band of storm chasers led by Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt. So with that being said, I have a special guest for today. I'll bring him on in just a second, but let's really quickly properly introduce the show. All right, y'all. So welcome back to Throwback Theater. As the name suggests, we like to look back at classic films and their influence on films that are coming out. Obviously, Twisters is a direct sequel to Twister. And before we get into the film, let me introduce my special guest. We have Formal with us tonight. How you doing, Formal?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to talking about this. So
Yeah,
should be
man.
fun.
Really quick, you have your own channel where you review films and whatnot. Tell us where they could find you and a little bit about your channel.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. That's the main area where I'm active. Talking about pretty much everything, movies wise, also TV shows, nerdy stuff, all that. And I write my thoughts on like the movies, like on Letterboxd mainly now. So you can always check that out. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome, you guys. So please be sure to check out the Formal review. And so let's kind of just dig into it. Let's get right to the nitty gritty. The original film, like I said, was directed by Jan de Bont, and this was coming fresh off of Speed, which was his directorial debut. Jan de Bont was normally like a director of photography. He moved into the director's chair for Speed, and obviously the Keanu Reeves film was a huge hit. And somewhere along the line, I guess this fell into his lap, and he just continued his because he had a knack for like action and obviously Speed and both Twister have a lot of practical effects, but Twister has really introduced some really cool CG. Personally, even going back to '97 when I was a kid, I thought the Twisters looked amazing. I thought the visual effects were great. So, looking at the film, it stars Bill Paxton as a storm chaser. And there's a little bit of a melodramatic, cheesy subplot here, where his ex-wife, I guess, was Helen Hunt, and she was traumatized as a kid. Her father got killed by a twister, and she's like a expert, tornado wrangler, so to say, kind of like not to use the words from the new film, but that's his ex-wife, and he's trying to get her to sign divorce papers, but they're in the middle of like the biggest tornado storm in years, and as it turns out, he gets pulled back into the fold, and he brings his wife Jamie Gertz along for the ride. So for more or less, that's the synopsis of the 1997 film Twister. I wanted to touch upon the first impressions for both of us. So Formal, from what I understand before we started the show, I know you weren't a huge fan of this, so kind of just go over the first time you saw the film, how you felt about it, and you just recently rewatched it as well, right?
Yeah, I just rewatched it. Just a Blu-ray copy. I know there's now 4K, which supposedly makes the audio and visuals a little bit better. Though I haven't seen that one yet. I guess like first impressions like years ago. I don't remember exactly when I first saw it, but I think like disaster films, like as I was growing up, they kind of weren't really my thing.
Okay.
Like I'm just not like really into that. Uh, and I think kind of like even now as an adult, I'm still not really into it. I do know that at least like when it comes to like a lot of people, like I'm guessing yourself, like really like the action and stuff. And like from what I've read, there was like a big like it kind of was one of those films that made science cool. But at least for me, and like when I was younger, I watched Contact first, which
Nice.
that one is what I'm guessing what a lot of people found in this. But yeah, I think like in general, it's just not a my cup of tea, but like I understand why people like it. It's just not for me because I think I saw like similar storylines just like before I saw that one, so it kind of just felt the same. And then like especially on the rewatch, the CG, at least of the Blu-ray, some of the CGs not great, but it was also like 96, 97. So what
Yeah.
can you like? There's just so much you can ask for there. But then Jurassic Park is also around there, so I don't know. Yeah, like I respect other people's liking of it. I just don't have that same thing.
Right. No, it's all good, man. And for me myself, well, the funny thing is, when I first saw this film, I don't know what it was in the theater I was in, but they had the volume just cranked, right? And this was when, God, this is gonna make me sound old, but before IMAX and Dolby, the thing at the theater that, when films had good sound, you would see like a THX logo. And I don't know if you remember this, Formal,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
show it before
Like
big
that.
blockbuster
Yeah,
films
yeah.
like Twister, Jurassic Park, and it was like manufactured with that particular sound, and it just enhanced the film, and it was like and it was like THX, and you're like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
So this was like
Yeah,
pre
yeah,
IMAX, pre Dolby. This was like the premium sound experience. And I'm gonna be honest, when I was a kid, I was terrified of this film. The sound of the Twister, the sound design from this particular film, like my seat was shaking. I was like, holy shit, I feel like I'm in a tornado because I'm a child and I don't know any better. And after I got over that fear, though, obviously VHS was a big thing. And man, I watched this movie like a lot. Like it was this film, it was Independence Day, and kind of like to speak to your how you're not really into disaster films. I don't know what it is. I love that stuff, man. Like,
yeah.
around the time it was like Titanic, Volcano, Dante's Peak, like all these random ass like disaster films. Obviously, Titanic's its own beast, but
Yeah.
I love this stuff, man. And what's interesting is I got really attached to this little ragtag group of storm chasers, which when I was a kid, I didn't realize how star-studded it was because they
Yeah,
really weren't who they were yet. Like, for example, rest in peace, Philip Seymour Hoffman, a fantastic actor. He wasn't really Philip Seymour Hoffman yet. This was before he really blew up
Mm-hmm.
with all of his other roles. We have Alan Ruck from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He was also in
Yep.
Speed, and more recently he was in Succession, which was fantastic. And of course, Jamie Gertz herself was like an 80s actress herself, and Bill Paxton, of course, it kind of speaks for himself, like Aliens. He was in a lot of Cameron stuff, Terminator. So I love the cast, I love the adventure. There was something about like the practical effects they use, especially in the final act. Like, do you remember that sequence where like tractors were falling out of the sky?
Yeah.
And as a kid, I loved that, and it was like, oh, Helen Hunt's like left, right, left, and there's
Yeah.
like tractors
I
falling out
can.
of the sky, and then a house. They drive through a house and stuff like that. Just blew my mind, especially like the filmmaking of it. And it just in my head, I'm like, holy shit, they drove through a house because they really did. And if you watch the film,
Mhm.
they literally drive through a house. So I just love the that fun adventure of it. So um let's go
Yeah, that
into
that
our
that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
just to also bring up one other cast member because I completely forgot he was in the movie until I rewatched it. The kind of antagonist PhD guy, the guy who like is like privately
Oh,
funded or whatever, is Carrie
Carrie
Yules or
Ells.
however
Yeah, yeah.
else. Yeah, like completely
Yeah,
forgot
man.
he's in it. Like I was just like, oh yeah, like there's a bunch of like random '90s like films that he's in that I just completely forget because it's like weirdly he has like some sort of like range on characters. They're odd, but like like you compare like this to obviously Princess Bride, then you also have
Right.
Saw. Oh, Saw's not '90s, but still like that, and then you have Liar Liar, and then well, Princess Bride and I would say Robin Hood are kind of similar type of characters, but in the
Right.
like just how they look and stuff. So it's like weird seeing him. I was like, oh, and it's kind of like he has his accents even more different than like other times, and I'm like, well, I completely forgot that he was in the movie. So yeah, that was fun to I guess rewatch, and also with the audio thing, that's one thing I do want to like watch this on like the new 4K version of it because supposedly if you have like a good sound system, Like the tornadoes will like basically recreate the experience that you had. From what I've
Yeah.
heard, is that like it basically will the sound will basically like you're in essentially inside the tornado in those specific scenes and stuff. So it's like supposedly really really good. I just haven't had a chance
Yeah,
to
no, and
check it out yet.
you can imagine, right? If you had a home theater system back then, this was the kind of movie you'd show off. Like you
Yeah,
would show this off, or you would show off like Jurassic Park, like, yo, listen to my sound system, So this was one of those movies, right?
yeah,
Um, I love that you brought up Carrie Elves, man, because as much as I feel like Princess Bride is arguably his most memorable role, if not Saw for the younger kids, but I always go back to Robin Hood Men in Tights, so I love that you
yeah,
brought that up, man. He
yeah.
he is I love that movie, man, and he's great in it. So
That's a
yeah,
hilarious
man,
movie. Yeah.
awesome cast, awesome cast. And let's kind of just dive into our favorite moments, man. If you had any, I know that's not really your thing, but just go through like a scene or two that you really enjoyed.
I mean, I think like outside like of the CGI aspects, I think like the action sequences, like you said, are like enjoyable. I think like that's where like honestly the film shines the most is just like
Yeah,
during those like action whenever like they're dealing with the tornado. I think like that like there's a lot of tension there, and obviously when you see obviously the huge like tornadoes, like you feel the severity of it. Like I mean, it's kind of like real life, not real life in the exact way. Obviously, there's not too many of those big ones around, but like especially the past few months, like there's been like more and more cases of like tornadoes, like at least I've seen on the news and stuff. So it's especially rewatching this one like today, it's kind of just like a weird like aspect to it. So I really enjoyed that. Honestly, I would just say those are the stuff that kept me a little bit more engrossed in the story, just so I could get to those parts.
yeah,
But yeah, I would say yeah, mostly that are my favorite moments.
awesome, man. Um, I'll be honest, this isn't even like the actual still from the film, but I laughed so hard the very first time I saw a cow flying through the air. And in particular, I really loved the way they wrote the dialogue. Like, for example, it was not only was it so casual and nonchalant, but like Helen Hunt was just like very like plainly like cow, and a cow
Yeah.
flies across the screen. And then another cow, or it seems, flies across the screen again, and she's like, "Oh, another cow." And then Bill Paxton's like, "I think that's the same one." So that's a moment that stuck with me, and even to this day, like I mean, I'm laughing right now. It still kind of gets a chuckle out of me. So I just love the cow, and to be fair, the CG on the cow was not great. There's some parts of the CG, like some of the Twister stuff, that looks really good, but stuff like the cow, or like I think it was when they were in the rain in like in the second to third act, there was a log that hits their truck, and the log looked very like glossy and plastic. So I mean, like you were saying earlier, Formal, like some of the CG is a little dated, but I would like to say at least 80% of it looks pretty good, at least for its time, right? So
Yeah.
um shouts out to the flying cow. It still manages to get a laugh out of me, and it's one of the moments that I just always stuck with me forever. So shouts out to another moment too where they were hauled up in a little what do you call it? Not a barn of some sort, but they were in like some kind of like random building next to a drive-in theater. And then you see like they're watching The Shining during the drive-through, and then you see like Jack Nicholson's face as the screen starts to get ripped apart by the tornado, and then the
Uh,
drive-through sign flies into the building where they're hiding. I think it's some sort of like auto thing, because they were like hiding in this like little like crevice in the ground, but it's like where you would do oil changes and stuff like that.
mhm.
But I love that sequence as well, like the stuff flying through the ceiling, seeing the drive-through sign like with the fluorescent lights and like crashing in and the sparks flying everywhere. Like that was a cool moment. Oh, and I think it was a car thing, because there was like a hubcap that got dislodged and
Okay.
it slices that old dude's forehead. I don't know if you remember that part. But anyways, shouts out to that sequence too. That sequence was really intense. So um to kind of close things up and kind of tie a ribbon on the whole thing, obviously I want to talk about this legacy, which, for better or for worse, nostalgia is running rampant. It has been for the past 5 to,
Mhm.
for a greater part of this past decade, to where we're at right now. And you look at films like Top Gun Maverick, and then you look at films like Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I didn't love Frozen Empire, but obviously there is a audience for some of these films, especially these classic films like a Ghostbusters, like a Top Gun.
Right.
And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, right? So this weekend we have Twisters. As I stated earlier, is directed by Lee Isaac Chung, starring Glenn Powell, who's the guy right now. He's like the it guy, the trending star, as most Hollywood things go through. There's always like an it guy or girl that they try to throw in all these movies. And then we have Daisy Edgar Jones, who what was that show she was in? It was on Amazon, right?
I don't remember offhand. I'm looking it up
It's like
though.
something in the six, it's like a music thing. I didn't really get into it, but that's where she's from. Of course, Anthony Ramos from In the Heights, Transformers, Rise of the Beasts. So we have a fun group of cast here. Katie O'Brien, she was most recently in Love Lies Bleeding. I loved that film earlier this year. So did we need a sequel to Twisters? I think that was my biggest, or to Twister, I should say. That was my biggest thing when I heard this was announced. But I'm a big fan of Lee Isaac Chung. I really, really liked Minari. So that kind of piqued my interest a little bit. And then we got the trailer, which I thought was fantastic. And by the way, did you get a chance to see the film yet?
No, I haven't. I think you brought up a good question of, do we need a sequel? I mean, like you said, a lot of the nostalgic things are, you can ask that, and I would say a good 60-70% of the time the answer is not really a yes. Um
Right.
but yeah, I
Right. And then
mean,
you look at films like, for example, what was it? Dumb and Dumber 2 or like Anchorman 2, and it comes
or
so late after the first
or
film, and it's
Zoolander.
like, yeah, Zoolander, and it's like it just doesn't hit as good, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think we need a sequel to Twister, but as someone that saw it, right? Or at least I saw like 75%. I actually had to go to work, so I actually left early. But I was loving it for the most part. I'm gonna try to finish the film later this weekend. Thank you, AMC A List. It gives me the ability to like watch a film and then watch it again and not feel bad about it, right? I didn't really
Yeah.
pay for my ticket, so but yeah, it brings up the question. This film is almost 30 years later, and it has none of the original cast involved. So, at least with something like Ghostbusters or Top Gun, you bring back like, Tom Cruise or Bill Murray. But unfortunately, not only is there no original cast members in this film, but RIP Bill Paxton and Philip Seymour Hoffman, they're no longer with us. So,
Yeah.
yeah, man,
I
I
feel
don't
like,
think we
yeah,
needed
if you're
this.
gonna bring back like any, like, it's hard to, like, I mean, that's one of my, if anything, one of the faults that I have with the originals, that I feel like the characters are kind of generic, I feel. So
Yeah,
like, not that like you should replace actors, I'm not saying that, but like I think like, I don't think of these characters as like a Top Gun Maverick type of thing. Like, it's not like that is Tom Cruise. Like, you can't really take that away. Whereas like, this is not Bill Paxton's like signature role, even if he was around, or it's definitely not
yeah,
Philip Seymour Hoffman's if he was still around with. So it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense, I feel. And if anything, I think I haven't seen it. The CGI in Hope would be better, and like, I think like, hopefully will keep up and be just as potentially exciting as it was for you the first time. I think like that's what it, if anything, that's what it deserves, is to just keep that like intensity. And I think that's hopefully what it can do. And what I've been reading about it, that's apparently what it does. So um, I think this is, if anything, the easiest sequel to potentially make, because you just have to kind of be kind of along the same lines of it, and you'll have people enjoy it. I feel, I don't think you have to really do as much um in comparison to like Lord of the Rings coming out with The Hobbit years later or something like that. Obviously that's not a sequel, but
right,
like, like something that's that significant. Twisters,
right.
like, I feel like isn't on that same level as those, or even Top Gun. I mean, maybe, I don't know, Top Gun, but like, you know what I mean? Like, when it comes to just like, there's I guess not the bar is not like a low bar, but it's a lower bar than other um movies to be made sequel, like Mary Poppins and Mary Poppins Returns. Like the bar was extremely high for that.
Right.
Did it
And I
make
feel
it?
bad.
Not.
I mean, Emily Blunt's fantastic, but that's such a big role to step into, like you're saying, like
Yeah,
those shoes to fill. Those are big shoes, right? So
yeah. So like I think with that, like it didn't make it. I love it. I really like the movie. Don't get me wrong, but is it as good as the original? I wouldn't think so. It's different, but that's kind of just that's arguably why it's harder to do. Whereas this one, I feel, again, haven't seen the new one yet, but I would imagine I think it's doing well, and it'll probably any fan of the original will probably really like it. Um,
yeah.
I'm not rushing out to see it, type of thing, but
Of course not.
maybe on a Tuesday, or maybe afternoon matinee type of thing if I get around to it. But yeah.
For sure, man. And like I don't really want to dive too much into Twisters, but I just feel like you said, it kind of sells itself, right? Like, for example, there's been a million shark movies ever since the original Jaws, right? We got like Deep Blue Sea, we got The Meg, The Shallows with was it Blake Lively? So I feel like, especially with a film
Sharknado.
like this, exactly. Sharknado. So I think with a film like this, like what you're getting into. Like, I
Yeah.
imagine there's a lot of people watching this film. Maybe they haven't even seen Twister. You know what I mean? I don't think they're going back for the nostalgia as much as someone like I am. I feel like there's a very small corner of the universe where there's people like me that adore the original film the way I do. So I think it's like they're drawn to the disaster element, to the action element, and I think,
Hmm.
I think the film's tracking for like 70 something mil. It's actually doing really well. So we'll see where on Sunday where the box office is, but it's doing pretty well. And yeah, man, I don't think the people are necessarily coming back because of the original film. To your point, so
That's yeah, that's a valid point. Yeah, I see what you mean. That makes sense too. Um, yeah, it's like if you go to a rock movie, you kind of know exactly what you're getting. So yeah, with this,
exactly.
I don't like that's it. Kind of also, yeah. I think I agree with that. Of you know what you're getting, and I feel that it'll probably succeed at that. And similar to the first one, if anything, it's like how much does that like go? Like how much do you feel that like in or how much are you into disaster movies? Like me, I have a hunch I'll probably feel the exact same way I felt about the first one, aside from obviously updated technology. But I would probably, but there's plenty of, I know that there's a population of people that are really into disaster movies, and I'm just not of that population.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And I will tell you this much, because I did see like most of the film. Yeah, you're probably not gonna enjoy it that much. It's kind of fun what they did. I don't know if I want to spoil it on air right now, but they kind of like, well, I guess it's not really a spoiler, but they kind of flipped the roles a little bit. So you remember how in the original, Bill Paxton and his crew were like the rebellious, like, oh, we do this for the love of it kind of thing. And then the Carrie Ellis
Mhm.
character was all corporate and like scientific and shit, and he was just in it for the money, so to say.
Right, right.
Yeah, so they kind of flipped that a little bit, where they have it so our protagonist is with the corporate crew, and then Glenn Powell is leading like the cool tornado guys, and he's kind of like the antagonist of our Daisy Edgar Jones. So they kind of flipped the roles a
Interesting.
little bit, which yeah, it's
I
kind of
wouldn't have
interesting.
expected that.
Yeah, no, and then so we're in the corporate side, and then she's looking over at him like, oh, what an asshole. You know what I mean? Like, like, so yeah, so there's that. I thought it was kind of fun doing the role reversal, and to be honest, I actually thought the leads were really good. Anthony Ramos, Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones. So,
I
yeah,
do
there's
really
that.
like Anthony Ramos. I like seeing him and stuff. I think he's very talented
Oh yeah,
musically,
no, he's
and also like acting wise. I think he's fun, and he just has a good, like, I think, charisma. So I'm
yeah,
excited to see him in big films. So hopefully he keeps going.
yeah, absolutely, man. So yeah, that about wraps it up, you guys. Formal, thank you for joining me, man. I know
Um,
it's kind of last minute here, but I appreciate you coming on the stream, man. It's good to see you. It's been a while, but before we head out, just remind people where they could find you. Do you have any like reviews you've done lately or recently?
Um, I think the most recent one, outside of like, I'm gonna probably write one quickly for this, but I think like the most recent one was maybe, if the imaginary friends thing.
Okay,
And I still haven't put out my Inside Out 2 one yet. I need to do that too, but that one's a lot more positively saying, so it's a lot easier to say.
for sure. And then you're
Yeah.
at the formal review, right? On Letterbox
Yes.
and Twitter and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, check them out at the formal review. You can follow me on Twitter, Letterbox at Marcellus Durden. I'm in the middle of writing a review for Sing Sing. Fantastic film starring Coleman Domingo, based on a true story
Right.
about incarcerated gentlemen rehabilitating through art, which is the name of the program, and they put on stage projections while they're in prison. So really awesome film. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. And Coleman Domingo was actually at the screening I was at over here in San Francisco. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, it was so cool. He was on stage and kind of gave us more insight into the film. And a lot of the actors in Sing Sing were actually in Sing Sing, which is amazing. Like they actually got to play themselves. And there's a lead character in the film. He's making his film debut, and he's literally playing himself, which is awesome, awesome. So,
Oh, that
guys, check
I
out
love when
Sing
they do
Sing.
things like that.
Hell yeah, man. I'm gonna have a review posted on the Cinema Spot. Follow us on all socials at the Cinema Spot and Cinema Spot, thecinemasspot.com. On this channel, you can find us every Sunday doing live film news, the Geekly Goods Roundup. And I'll be joined by our team leader, Leo, and our co host, Ileana. So please join us this Sunday and every Sunday. If you like this stream, like and subscribe down below and stay tuned. I'm going to try to make this more, maybe like twice a month, and just try to like hit on big films and kind of look back at their influence or their predecessors like we did today. So thank you everyone who's watching. And yeah, we'll catch you guys next time.